I just wanted to start by thanking you sincerely for sharing your story with Witness Underground and bringing a lot of that past experience growing up as a Jehovah's Witness, along with the music aspect of it. Because when I watched the documentary and you talked about your shunning experience, that really got to me because it brought me back to my own shunning and how my family treated me and things like everything that you went through. I felt like I related so much to it that I was just like, oh, another one. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
yeah, yeah, and all it's such a it's we can all relate, right? Like when we were all together in the organization, we can relate, and after we leave and we've all had this experience, it's very, very relatable. And I'm sorry you've gone through that.
Yeah, I know. It just kind of sucks because I think that was the main reason, kind of what woke me up, is how the family treated us when we decided to no longer be witnesses and we woke up to that and just wanted to live our own lives and we couldn't do that without losing our
Mhm.
family. And when I
Yeah,
saw that in the documentary for you, it was like you lost your family with the religious aspect of it, but also in the physical world, because when your brother passed away, it was like you actually really did lose somebody and
yeah.
they didn't even respect you in that way. And I felt like I almost started crying, to be honest, because I was like, how can they treat you like that, especially with the whole funeral and stuff like that. And I really feel sorry that you went through that. So that's, I just wanted to
Thank you.
say that first.
Thank you. I greatly appreciate that. Uh, it's been a number of years now, but I still yeah, it's actually hard for me to watch the movie. So
Hmm.
um because it brings it all back up. So it's not far from my mind most days. That was a really extreme example, I think, of what a lot of people have gone through, but my example was a little bit more um, brutal. Is the word I would.
Right. Yes, that's exactly how I felt. But then I really love the musical journey that you guys have. It's kind of weird because that was so frowned upon as a Jehovah's Witness growing up, even for me. Because I know, like, I'm a different generation than you. So I'm only
Uh-huh.
27. So I was a little girl when you were living your life.
Yeah,
Um, and I'm like, how
I've
could
got
these
records
people
older
do
than
this?
you. I've got records that I've recorded that are older than you. So yeah.
Oh my goodness. You see what I'm saying? So I'm like, this even goes beyond me because I'm not even old
Oh yeah.
enough to relate to that aspect. But I'm like, look at this. Like, you guys did the band, you've recorded music, you've got the label, like everything. And I'm like, by the time I came into the world, that was already done away with. So I wanted to ask you about that journey and how that collided with the Jehovah's Witness upbringing. Because I'm like, how did this last? Like, they
Well,
would have.
okay. I get asked this a lot, and it's not clear in the movie, so I will explain it
Mm-hmm.
as best I can. My parents were raised. My mom was raised Catholic. My dad was raised Methodist, and they met in high school, and they got married very shortly thereafter. So they got married real young. My mom was like 18. My dad was like 20. Um, and they had my brother Rhett within the first year of being married. With Rhett, when Rhett was born, he was born a couple months premature, and so he was like in the NICU, and he was in an incubator and all this stuff, and he just barely made it. He had a blood transfusion, and uh, he had like clinically died at one point, and they brought him back. So it was this really traumatic period. And during that period was when my mom was approached by a Jehovah's Witness with the old truth book, and was told, you know, the line that was used was, when you say the Lord's Prayer and you say, "Hallowed be thy name," what's his name? And my mom's like, I don't know, Lord? Nope. Jesus? Nope. Go in your Bible, look at Psalms 83:18. It's Jehovah. So my mom did, and then she started studying, and she was pregnant with me while she was studying. So they came in really fast, pregnancy, traumatic birth, uh, start a Bible study, get baptized, second kid like 14 months later. So they didn't have a lot of time to think about it. Now, what's funny is my mom has a dozen siblings, big giant Catholic family, 13 kids. And her dad was a musician and her mom was a singer. And they did a lot of home recording. So they would get out the reel to reel and they would line all the kids up and they would all sing songs. And I have some of those old recordings. They're wonderful. I have my grandma and
Mm-hmm.
grandpa singing and stuff. So my mom was already in a band. She was already in a band from high school. She was singing lead singer, and when she was on stage with me, she was pregnant with me, um,
Mm-hmm.
and this was about 1971, 72 era. There weren't specific rules about being a witness and being a musician or a singer, and it wouldn't have mattered because my mom already was doing music before she came in. So she just changed the way she did music when she came in. So she basically, her band became like the local elder approved um, band for everybody's wedding receptions. You would go and it would almost
Mm-hmm.
always be my mom's band. And there were like 3 or 4 bands in the Twin Cities area that were all like, they had sort of vetted song lists that wouldn't offend anybody and they would play at people's weddings, which
Mm-hmm.
is how it happened for me and my brother. We were raised going to band practices on the Wednesday night between the Tuesday night and Thursday night meetings. And we were raised
Mm-hmm.
going and seeing our mom sing on stage. So it never felt like it was anything abnormal to do it. We were fortunate enough that we actually started with our own music when, I don't know, I was 6. My brother was drumming on stage with my mom's band when he was 7. So
Wow.
we were at this at that really really early stage, and we at when we got to high school, people started to point out that it was unusual. Like,
Mm-hmm.
and we started to look around like, are we the only ones doing this?
Mm-hmm.
Like, what?
Yeah.
But we also figured out that, like, if the elders could play in a band at somebody's wedding reception,
Mm-hmm.
why couldn't we write and record our own songs? It didn't seem like there was a conflict, and technically there wasn't. I mean, in the Twin Cities, Prince became a Jehovah's Witness. He didn't
Mm-hmm.
stop being a musician just because he became a Jehovah's Witness. I mean, he was
Mm-hmm.
in a local kingdom hall, like, so it wasn't the conflict. Now I know it's become a bigger conflict. Or other parts of the country, the witness culture is very different, and that probably wouldn't have been the case. But in the
Mm-hmm.
Midwest, it really wasn't that weird. It only kind of we just realized that we had to kind of protect it a little bit. I mentioned this in the movie that we had to keep it kind of
Mm-hmm.
in the box, because we didn't want to get people mad at us for doing it. We didn't want
Mm-hmm.
we didn't want to draw controversy to ourselves, but as long as we just were, I don't know, writing our recording our little silly albums, who cared, So we got lucky that way. It was because of our parents, and it was because, we just didn't know any better until we were older, and by then we'd been doing it our whole lives.
Right. Okay. That was the missing link for me because I
Hmm.
was like, when I was growing up in Florida, a lot of the kids were homeschooling. And so they would have the elective of piano and different
Hmm.
instruments. And that was the only reason why they were musically inclined. And then they would have recitals like at the end of the year. And then they would invite the whole entire congregation. So if it wasn't for like the mandatory or like the elective for educational purposes, you
Hmm.
were not playing music and doing tours or, bringing
No.
attention to yourself.
Well, yeah. The double standard there's funny though, because when I was a kid, going to the Kingdom Hall in like the late 70s, early 80s, we actually didn't even have taped music in the congregation yet. We had an actual piano in the Kingdom Hall, and a sister would go up
Wow.
and plunk her way through "Keep Your Eyes on the Prize," and we would all sing along. And then we got tapes, and then but it's just funny how,
Mm-hmm.
depending on when you were born and depending on when you
Mm-hmm.
encountered all of this, you got a different experience. But I still think it's pretty cool that, like, I go back to the Prince thing.
Mm-hmm.
He came into the religion because he was studying with a guy named Larry Graham. Larry Graham was in Sly and the Family Stone, He was like one of the guy who invented like slap bass. He's like a legend. He's in Rock Hall of Fame. He's also an elder in the Mound congregation on the west side of the Twin Cities. Still is. I mean, and
Wow.
he's still a famous funk bass player. He came to
Mm-hmm.
one of my shows once, which was pretty trippy, to be standing on stage playing bass and look out and see Larry Graham and be like, "Oh man, I'm terrible."
Wow.
Because he had played with Prince at the Metrodome like 3 days earlier, and
Mm-hmm.
then he like came with his kids to come to one of our stupid shows. So um, just saying, there was a culture there where it was normalized to
Mm-hmm.
an extent where it would have seemed weird to make a big deal out of it unless people,
Mm-hmm.
were doing immorality or drugs or whatever.
Yeah, and in other congregations, it was so strict. Because I remember one
Mhm.
of the other people in the documentary said it wasn't like a footloose type of thing. But then I was like, in some congregations, it really was. Like in upstate New York, one of
Sure.
my cousins were like, we couldn't even dance, we couldn't even get up or like moving your hips was like illegal over there. So and the brothers would like sit you down. And in another party that I went to, they tapped me on on the shoulder and was like, Miss, sister, you need to stop dancing." And I'm like, "But this is a graduation party. What do you mean?" It put me in that mental state again to like think about how Jehovah's Witnesses have changed even with the music stuff and
Yeah.
how we are supposed to listen to music, choose music, filter through the music, and even so far as to say like the music can summon demons and stuff like that. And I
Yeah.
remember somebody else said that in the documentary, and I was like, exactly, like
Yeah.
they
No,
do
Lionel
believe that.
Richie. You know that you got to be careful of that disco beat. Um, It's
Yes.
one of my favorite parts of the whole documentary is Chad saying that about the disco beat and Lionel Richie. Um, but
Mm-hmm.
it's interesting because we thought it was normal, but the one of the reasons it became a documentary was because we inadvertently gave all these other people permission. They were
Mm-hmm.
like, and that didn't happen until we kind of went online back in the mid 90s. But when we started, people started finding out, and the word sort of spread through the witness underground between the congregations. um, People started to go, "Oh, there's a band in Chicago that finds out there's a band in Madison that finds out there's a band in Minnesota," and then so everybody was kind of giving each other this sort of implicit permission to do the thing that they kind of wanted to do anyhow. And that was what was so fun about it. It was finding out you weren't alone in this. And that's
Mm-hmm.
one of the things I love about music and art in general is that you make it sort of privately. You make it because you have feelings and you want to
Mm-hmm.
you're conflicted, or you're dealing with difficult emotions, and then you put it out there and somebody hears it and they go, "Yeah, me too." And the next thing you know, you have this big connection, and that
Right.
connection was so strong that it actually transcended us leaving the religion, and it's still a connection we have now all these years. So it's kind of awesome. Not to spoil the
Yeah.
entire documentary, but go watch it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, if you're watching this.
That's exactly what I was gonna ask you because I'm like, even when I was watching it, I'm like, how long is this gonna last? Because all of you guys started as JWs, but then it didn't end that way because you were like, oh, somebody got disfellowshipped, and then that opened up the position for another drummer or another person to enter into the band. And then that's what happened with you too, because you woke up. So now you're not a witness, but this is your band, you're making music, it's your label, but you're
Mhm.
DF. So like, so
I
tell
had
me,
to
so
leave the
walk me
label.
through that.
I had to leave the label. I left it immediately because I.
Really?
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. I disassociated when I realized it wasn't true, and I
Mm-hmm.
realized that it was. I don't try to debate what people believe or don't believe at this point, but I knew that for me, there were things that were being taught that I could not, in good conscience, teach my own child. And I had a kid, and I was like, well, I'm gonna raise my son by not lying to him about what dad believes. And so that was the principle that made me decide that I had to leave. I disassociated specific, which I know a lot of people don't. A lot of people do a fade, or they just sort of move to another place and don't transfer their publisher cards or whatever. I was a little annoyed by the idea that if I didn't just say I'm not a witness, but I did say I actively believe in something else. I didn't want to have to define myself or my life by what I used to be or what I was indoctrinated to be or what I wasn't anymore. And I was like, when I was a witness, I would go door to door. I'd go up to people's houses. I would tell them what I believe, and I was never ashamed of that. I'm like, I'm not going to be ashamed to believe what wherever my evidence-based journey takes me, whatever I learn over my future, my spiritual journey. I'm not going to be ashamed of it. So I just didn't want to live in the shadow of having to kind of pretend I still did. So I wanted my family to at least be aware that like I'm actively saying, no disrespect. I love you guys. You believe what you want to believe, but I can't in good conscience do this. And so I'm not going to pretend. So I did write a letter. I was never disfellowshipped for cause or anything like that. I just chose to resign. And that seems to have made it worse, though, unfortunately. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
it gets looked at as you know, you become the evil, satanic, diseased mind apostate.
Right, an apostate, because you're making the conscious decision to leave the truth, and you know that this is the truth. So why would you leave it? Yeah,
Right.
I get it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And if you just say, "Yeah, I know it's not the truth. I'm sorry. I know you
Mm-hmm.
guys think it is, but I'm
Right.
convinced. I'm convinced otherwise." Then I'm just having a good conscience. That's the way I look at it.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And I like how you also talked about that in the film because you said I mean it destroyed your marriage, right? Like you said, yeah, you
Yeah.
never saw your wife again, so you lost your marriage. What about your kid together? Were you able to also raise him like out of the religion, or
Yes.
like what happened with that? Okay, good.
Yep. He's a grown adult man now, and he's awesome, and he never really believed it. I guess I was not a very good indoctrinator. Uh, I tried. I did everything you're supposed to, and I studied the Bible study stories with him, and I brought him to meetings and took him out to
Mm-hmm.
service. But he was relieved when I said I didn't
Good.
believe anymore. He was just like, "Oh man, I was wondering when you're going to figure that out." So that all
Wow.
worked out fine. Um, so I did not everything that happened was was terrible. I mean, I got remarried. We've been
Mm-hmm.
together for 18 years. I think that
Mm-hmm.
qualifies for something. No,
Wow.
she's in the other room right now.
Wow, you're so lucky. You found love again. That's amazing. How did you do that? Like how did you move on from like the whole JW stuff and then date again, live again, make music again? Like how did you transition to a new life?
That's a tough question. Um,
It's so loaded. I'm sorry.
no, 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 but I think everybody needs to focus on that. That's like my number
Mhm.
one piece of advice whenever somebody comes out. And I got two words: deprogram yourself. Like, I give you a little analogy. I was seeing a therapist briefly after, well, for a couple of years after I left the witnesses, part of my recovery phase, and um, he, do you remember, how that bridge just collapsed out in uh, uh, Baltimore or Maryland,
Mhm.
wherever recently? There was another bridge collapse like that. That was the 35W highway in Minneapolis about 20, 30 years ago, and
Mhm.
it was really scary. The bridge just collapsed while traffic was on it, and some people fell in the river and a bunch of stuff. And he said, imagine you were on that bridge and you were just
Mhm.
crossing it and it collapsed, and then you just narrowly survived it.
Mhm.
And then you were traumatized after that. He said, you're going to play that event in your head over and over and over again. And as long as that's what you're doing, you're still on the bridge. Like, it doesn't
Mhm.
matter that you moved away from it, you survived it, you're still here, you're still on the bridge. And he said, where your recovery from trauma, whatever trauma that is, you have to make active steps to get off of that bridge. You gotta find a way to put it behind you. So when I looked at people who I had seen online or people who I knew who had left the witnesses and spent a lot of time in the XJW culture, spent a lot of time
Mhm.
thinking about it. And they had been out for 10, 20, 30, 40 years and they were still
Mhm.
mad about it.
Mhm.
I was like, that's not who I want to be.
Mhm.
I do not want to be living like that for the rest of my life. So I got really intentional. I wrote out
Mhm.
a lot. I read a lot. I
Mhm.
went to various therapy, went to other religious groups of different sorts just to explore and see what other
Mhm.
people did around questions of faith and belief and self discovery. But I went on about a 3 year like really intentional, and I did everything I could to learn how I had been programmed, so I
Mhm.
could learn how to become deprogrammed.
Mhm.
And it took about 3 years. It took about 3 years, and at the end of about 3 years, I was like, yeah, okay, now I'm just kind of a normal worldly guy. And um,
Mhm.
and at that same time, I had started dating, and I met my wife just on a dating website, like normal people do these days. And we um,
Mhm.
we went on a couple dates, and I found out she wasn't from an ex Jehovah's Witness background, but she had her own religious and family traumas that she needed to deal with, and we helped each other out on some of that, and
Mhm.
helped each other, get stronger as people. Um, and then honestly, I kind of put the XJW thing away. I would say about 2008, 2009, I kind of stopped paying attention to the Watchtower. I stopped paying attention to any of this stuff and just raised my kid, lived my life, got some rescue dogs, made
Mhm.
music, had fun. And then this documentary kind of brought me back into looking at it again. And the Watchtower world has changed so much in that like 10, 12,
Mhm.
13 years that is kind of fascinating, but I'm not coming back at it from a perspective of somebody who's like personally traumatized at this point anymore. I'm kind of, you
Right.
know, I'm just
Exactly.
I've got as much experience under my belt living as a non-witness almost as I did as a witness. I mean, I was 30 when I left. I'm 50 now, but if you don't count ages 0 to 10, um, that's 20 years both ways, and
Mhm.
I'm pretty thoroughly deprogrammed at this point. It's more about,
Mhm.
and I recommend it to everybody. Like, do not do yourself the favor.
Mhm.
Find out in which ways you are still secretly hoarding the idea that it's true, and
Mm.
go attack that.
Wow.
Prove
Yeah.
it for yourself whether it really is. If you're even not sure, if you're like, well, maybe they're right about 1914, go study 1914. Maybe they're right
Right.
about, and maybe you know what, you might find you agree with them, but at least make, we're supposed to
Mhm.
make the truth our own. Make the
Mhm.
truth your own after you leave the truth. And that's how you do. That's what I think people should do, in my humble opinion.
Wow, yeah. I mean, even for me, you see, that's why I'm so appreciative that you came back and did this because somebody like me who's so young, you know what I mean? I would never
Mhm.
know. I'm only 20 something years old and you brought this back even for the new generation of ex Jehovah's Witnesses who are coming out. And a lot of them are musicians or have passions that they weren't able to do while they were witnesses. And now they're out, but they're struggling with the trauma and they want to go back into doing what they love. But that's hard, like to bring your identity back, to learn who you are again, to know what you
Mhm.
like. I mean, I'm literally still
Yeah.
struggling with that too. So like when you said those things just now, it really touches my heart because I'm like, that's exactly how I feel. Like I'm in that boat and I feel like I'm over it. But now it's like, how do you begin new? Like, and live in the world and just be in the world and just try to be normal and just leave all that stuff behind.
Yeah.
And whenever it comes up, talk about it, but like I try not to get triggered anymore, try to leave all of that behind. And then I see you guys in this documentary when this is and talking about your past and everything, and then you guys are all older now and married and doing this and doing that, and I'm like, we can make it. You see, like they made it, we can
Yes.
make it.
Yes, you can. You totally can. I'm glad to hear that. Honestly, I'm really glad to hear that view because um, uh, I didn't have a plan with the documentary. I just got reached out to by Scott, and he said, "You're, I know you don't know me, but I know about you. Will you tell me your story?" And he interviewed me, and the interview that you see on screen in the movie is the first time I ever met him. That was the beginning of I just like went out to Colorado and he sat me down and he talked to me, and that's what's in the movie.
Mhm.
So there was no plan, and I was kind of
Mhm.
nervous about it because I didn't really want to get back in the world of the XJW thing. But
Mhm.
I keep hearing from other people, like what you just said, that
Mhm.
it's helpful, and
Mhm.
so therefore I'm very glad that it exists. I'm glad that I decided to come tell that story again because um, I could, you know, could have just told Scott, yeah, I don't want to go there. I left that way behind.
Mhm. Mhm.
Glad
Yeah,
I
because
didn't.
that was so long ago. It was like 20 years ago. Like that's way
Doesn't feel that
beyond.
long ago though. That's the trippy part. Like it's, you don't realize it when you're 25. You think being 50 you're gonna feel like a lot older, and then you're 50. You're like, I
Mhm.
still feel 25. What happened? I just feel like I lost track of 25 years.
Oh my goodness.
It's like,
Is that a good thing or a
I didn't
bad
get
thing?
mature. I didn't get wise. I didn't like. I just got like lost a bunch of hair and got gray.
Oh man. Yeah, because I'm like I'm everybody's on their own journey, you know what I mean? They're all in different phases of getting through over all of this trauma in
Mhm.
all aspects of life. So, everybody is going through it, but then when I see guys like you and it's almost like an icon but for us, like ex Jehovah's Witnesses who write books, who do music, who do documentaries, cuz even Scott and then he used to be an ex Jehovah's Witness too, right?
Yep. Yep.
and now
Yep.
he's doing film. So it's like these are our icons, and then the young ones like me, I still consider myself young, I'm only 27, but
You
like,
are. Yeah.
yeah, but and I see you guys having careers and doing what you love and creating something so like legit. Like it's not some bootleg song or whatever. Like it was legit like a banger. And I'm like, this is the Jehovah's Witness? What? And then or ex Jehovah's Witnesses? And I'm
No, a
like,
lot of
what?
that we made while we were in. I mean, that we
Right.
there was
Exactly.
so much good music in that community, and I mean, I'm still making music now. I got a new album coming out in a couple of weeks. I'm like, this
That's
is
amazing.
and I'm never gonna stop. I mean, why should I? What's the point? Um, but as far as
Mm-hmm.
like one more little piece of advice, especially for people
Mm-hmm.
who have a creative interest or people who are trying to move on, um,
Mm-hmm.
don't rush it. You can't. It takes time. You
Mm-hmm.
literally just have to, keep. One day you're gonna wake up. You're gonna be super depressed. Everything's gonna be horrible. You're gonna be angry. You're gonna spend the whole day yelling at the wall
Mm-hmm.
or having imaginary
Mm-hmm.
conversations with family members who won't talk to you anymore. And then the next day, it'll get a little better. And you got to have self-love. You got to have patience. Creativity is wonderful for it, though. If you can put it in a song, and that song, when you play it, can help
Mm-hmm.
you reach peace again, or write it, or uh, poetry, or paint it, or draw it, or film something, take a picture, like I think that's great. And if you don't have that if you don't have the type of creative impulse that you would want to share with other people, you can still do
Mm-hmm.
those things just therapeutically.
Right.
And
Yeah.
burn it, throw it away. Doesn't matter. It's not for capitalist consumption. It's for your healing. So
Exactly. It's for you, and those are the avenues that are productive, cuz a lot of times when you leave the Jehovah's Witnesses, we get so like self-destructive or like
mhm,
self-sabotaging or just like wanting to do drugs or alcohol or whatever that outlet may be, and it's so destructive, and I kind of regret that because I'm like I could have done this a better way if I did something else, or if I'm doing what I'm doing now if I did it years ago. So you know what I'm saying? Like it's
yeah,
it's good for other people to see like you can do like really productive things. Go to college, do a course, do learn an instrument, like do something productive. And you
yeah,
will see that it helps you by the time you're done doing it, well, like done listening to the song, done writing the book, done doing whatever, you feel so much better, and then you have something to look back on. Like I rewatch all of my videos, I see like other ex
nice.
Jehovah's Witness content, and I'm like, look at me, who is that person, who am I?
That's great. I mean, it's so good for yourself. esteem and self-image to be reminded that you are capable and smart and you can do things and you can accomplish things. And it doesn't, that what better is there? It's so
Mm-hmm.
great. And one other thing, you never know who you're helping. Like, you don't know
Mm-hmm.
who's seeing what you're putting out. And you don't know, you can't know that. And I've lost a lot of people, not just to the witness thing, but like I've lost a lot of people to death as well, who were creative, who left things behind. And their music or their work continues to impact me in a positive way, continues to make me a happier, better person. And that's why I'm so in favor of doing sharing creativity while you have the ability. Um, it can help you, but you never know who's going to be touched by that later. You never know, who's going to hear that or see that. So it's such a better cure for what ails you after you leave the witnesses than stewing and being mad. And there's so much to be mad about. You totally are justified, like, but it doesn't help you get off the bridge. And I was fortunate enough to realize that pretty early on. And yeah, so yeah, the first time this movie was ever shown in public that I was at was on the film festival circuit, and I went out to New York and we watched it at this theater out there. And afterwards, a bunch of people, we all went over to this bar and we were all staying up late and celebrating that the movie had a premiere and everything. It was super fun. But there was a ex-witness there, and he was there with his non-witness significant other. And she says, he's afraid to ask you this, but he just wants to know, how does he get where you are?
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, oh man, I'm going to get asked this question every now and then. And the only answer I'm going to be able to give people is like, it's going to be different for you, but you know, make it a goal, make it your intention. Plan,
Mm-hmm.
plan for the day when you're not going to care about the witnesses anymore.
Right. Yeah. Wow. Well,
Yeah.
thank you for that. That was
Huh?
amazing. That was really amazing. I do have some questions from viewers. I have
Oh,
like five
sure.
questions.
Okay.
So the first question is from the compassionate apostate. From one musician to another, how fundamental was music, both as a listener and as a musician, to your survival and to processing religious trauma?
On a scale of 1 to 10, it was like a 20.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah. Music is how my brain works. And
Mm-hmm.
eh, yeah, if I hadn't made some of the records I made in the first couple of years after I left, I don't even know what I would have done. And the connections I made through music kept me with relationships that are still the most important
Mm-hmm.
relationships in my life. And listening to music. I don't know a better way to get in touch with
Mm-hmm.
emotional states than to put on the music that triggers those emotional states. And sometimes you need that when you're sad or you're angry or you're hopeless or
Mm-hmm.
whatever. So yeah, I I I, I don't know. That's There's probably people in this world who don't connect with music quite like that, but
Mm-hmm.
I am not one of them. So for me, massive. It's weird. I actually
Mm-hmm.
started to run out of creativity for a little bit after I kind of felt like I was on the other side of it.
Wow.
I was like, well, what am I going to say now? I don't want to write another song about that. And
Mm-hmm.
it took me a while to open back up to the rest of the world. So,
Mm-hmm. Because you're changing, so your music is gonna
yep,
change too.
yep, 100%.
Yeah. And I also feel also like when I was a Jehovah's Witness, music was life saving. It was the only thing that kept me almost relevant to the world because
Mhm.
I was so sheltered, so isolated that everything was Kingdom Hall and Jehovah. There was nothing else. We weren't allowed to watch movies or read anything that wasn't Watchtower publications. So music was like the only outlet that I had. And that's how a lot of other young Jehovah's Witnesses are, like always with their iPods or, like my generation is
Yeah,
like that with the
yeah,
technology. So it's like
yeah,
music was life saving. If I didn't have music, I would have felt more suicidal than I was. But since I had
yeah.
music and I had at least one friend, it was
Hmm.
like that's what carried me through those decades. And then when I listen to those music now, I'm like, wow, that song would make me weep or cry or whatever, but now I can enjoy it. Like those were the hits. Those were like that was on the radio, and I was a teenager during that time, and I'm like, wow, how much has everything changed with myself? The
Hmm.
music is the same, you know what I mean? Like the emotion is
Isn't
still
that the
there. The
best? Isn't that the best?
right. And now you react to it differently. And
Yeah.
just like you said, whenever you are angry or sad, there's a song for that. When I'm sad, I
Mhm.
could play something that will make me feel like I need to cry something out, but I can't cry. Like that's another thing that I felt like leaving the Jehovah's Witnesses is like the emotional part, because you're
Mhm.
trained not to like care about certain stuff if you're not a witness, right? Everybody else is gonna die if
Right.
you're not a Jehovah's Witness, right?
Right.
So you grow up
Yeah.
with like this warped mentality of not caring about certain things if it doesn't have to do with a religion. So that's how I felt like I wasn't empathetic or anything like that. So I'm like, I need to force myself to cry, but I'm not sad about anything. What can I do? I would listen to music to help me cry, to help me get that out of my system instead of
Mhm.
just going mentally insane. And then the
Yeah.
music helps so much. I'm telling you, it's life saving. It's crazy. I don't know how.
I I I have a theory that we're I think the larger animal kingdom is more wired for melody and music than they are for language, and that
Mm-hmm.
at a very deep physical level, that that is a part of our minds that is like we've got a speaky layer on top of it, but music's below that. It's more
Mm-hmm.
core, and I think witnesses use that. Like,
Mm-hmm.
did you find that, I don't know, standing at an assembly and singing in a group of 5,000 of your fellow brothers and sisters a song about theocratic order or whatever, like it could still move you no matter what
Mm-hmm.
it was, and that shows you like music is can cut both ways. They'll use it
Right.
to encourage a feeling of connection and belonging to that group. And then when you're
Mm-hmm.
sitting there with your headphones or your iPod or your whatever you
Mm-hmm.
kids do these days, I use 78s and wax cylinders, but but when you're sitting there, like for me, I mean, I had my Walkman when I was like 12, and I like on my
I
paper
don't know
route,
what
my
that is.
headphones. It's a little cassette player. You saw.
Wow.
Didn't you see Guardians of the Galaxy?
Oh, yes, yes, yes. Okay.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay.
I had one of those. I'm from that generation.
Okay. Okay.
But put your favorite tape on and like listen to your favorite music and ride your bike through the neighborhood while like
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
escaping. It can be such a good escape. So I'm glad you had that.
Yes.
I'm glad you had that.
Yeah, that's what we all have. I mean, yeah, like what would we do without it? You know what I mean? That's crazy. Um, okay, so Kyle H, and these questions are coming from like a Discord chat.
Sure.
So I'm happy that people were wanting to like, ask you these questions as well. I wanted to give like everybody the opportunity. So Kyle H asks, what inspired you to get into the film?
Okay, so it's not a very exciting story, but I was just sitting at work one day and I got this text message from some random guy going, so I'm making these films about people who left the witnesses, and
Mm-hmm.
you don't know me, but I know a lot about you. You're the granddaddy apostate guy who everybody knows about. And I'm like, oh, am I now? And so I wrote him back this document. It was like 12, 13 page
Mm-hmm.
synopsis of here's what happened. And
Mm-hmm.
he's like, oh shit, I thought this was gonna be like a short, but this is like a
Mm-hmm.
movie. And
Mm-hmm.
I was like, yeah, there's enough here for a movie. I'm like, also here's a list of people you should talk to, who were also
Mm-hmm.
in this thing. And then I said, also, if you want, I have tons of photos and videos, and like I have the whole archive, and I will put it on a Google Drive for you.
Mm-hmm.
And then, enjoy. But see, that was easy for me to do because I didn't think it was ever going to turn into a movie.
Mm-hmm.
I was just like, yeah, you know what? I'm gonna get to make a new friend, and he will play around with this. And if I'm lucky, it might wind up as a YouTube thing someday, but it probably won't. I did not anticipate a theatrical release of a feature film. So
Mm-hmm.
inspired's the wrong word here, Kyle. I stumbled into it because it seemed innocuous enough, and thank God I did. I mean, I'm very glad. But I just and I love Scott. We're close now. We've this has been quite a journey we've been on together. But I didn't even know him before 2018. I had no intention of
Mm-hmm.
any film like this happening. Uh, it just blew up kind of on its own. Took on a life.
Right, yeah. And that's what connects us. Just like with me starting this
Mhm.
YouTube channel, I didn't know any of these people 3 months ago, but now I
Mhm.
have so many connections, so many friends, so many different platforms where everybody's reaching out to me and I can communicate back to them. And it's like I'm
So cool.
helping also my own community because I'm like, how do I reach them and give them something like this?
Hmm.
And that's what even got me to meeting you. Like it
Yeah.
was it was a documentary and then it was this, so I'm like, of course this is amazing.
How did you find it to watch it, by the way? Just curious.
Well, I did get a little emotional because it all of your experiences and everybody else also depicted. I'm going through that right now,
Mm,
so it was like, oh my goodness, it was hurtful, it was like sad, it was unfortunate, but then I was like I wanted the happy ending. I wanted to see how you guys came over it, how you guys continued to make music or like what. And that's what I appreciated was the aftermath. I always want to know how do they move on? What do they do after this? Because that's where I feel like I'm so empty. There's nothing there. Like where is
mhm,
the end of that tunnel? And then when you guys also started talking about how you woke up and then like you don't believe in certain things and stuff like that, and then I felt also relatable to that. Like I became an atheist, then I became agnostic, then I became Christian again. Like it was just so many journeys that you go through, and I'm like, I struggle with it, but at least it's depicted on film. Like this
yeah.
is proof that somebody else went through the same thing and overcame that and married again, had a family again, did despite everything that they did to you, you still moved on with that. And everybody else in the circle who also participated, it's like they slowly one by one everybody left too. So
Yeah.
I could have hope that maybe one day people will see, even my own family, they will be able to see how I moved on and I didn't care about what they thought. And I continue to be Christian despite them accusing me of leaving Jehovah and
Mhm.
wanting to be like live a sinful life or whatever. And it's
Right.
so hurtful and offensive because I still feel like, no, I believe in Jehovah, I believe in Jesus. I just don't believe in the JW narrative of them, of Christianity, but I still am living a Christian life. You know what I mean? So it's kind of
Mhm,
hard
mhm.
to want, because I don't have to prove it to anybody, but it's like
Right.
sometimes it forces you to like, no, I'm Christian, I'm good, you know what I mean, like you you want to fight back sometimes,
Yeah.
and I'm like,
Yes.
I'm done with that. I don't care. I'm just gonna go to church. I'm gonna live my life how I want, raise my children the way I want, and protect them from the toxic JW indoctrination.
Mhm,
And I had to lose a lot of people just for that decision, like literally going to a church and inquiring. I
mhm.
lost my entire family for that. Like I'm not even disfellowshipped, I'm not disassociated, nothing. I'm technically inactive right now, but because I went to that church, I lost everything.
I'm so
So
sorry. I really am.
yeah, thank you, but you know what, at the end of the day I feel like Nobody said it was going to be easy, like, but at least I am exercising my freedom of religion, my freedom of speech. They're not going to censor me anymore. I'm not going to stay quiet about what I believe in, just like you said a few minutes ago. And I'm going to do it. And you're not going to stop me or make me feel as if I'm going to die at Armageddon and I forfeited my everlasting life. And I'm like, who are you? Only God can decide that. You can't judge that. So
Mhm.
that's when I realized I'm doing the right thing for me. Because if that was being a Jehovah's Witness, if that is what being Christian is, I don't want to be that. I want to be a real Christian.
I you I amen to everything you just said. As I
like
mean,
like I
because
get really into it, you know what I
oh,
mean?
yeah, and
Like
but the very fact that you have the freedom to use your mind,
mhm.
believe as you believe, is problem. Shouldn't that be celebrated? Right? Like that should, and it's crazy because like my parents were not raised witnesses, but then they chose to turn their backs on what they had been raised and become witnesses, and their family didn't judge them for that. And
Exactly.
it's such a double standard. And to bring it back to the question about the movie again that Kyle asked about what inspired me to do it, I will say this.
Mhm.
Um, I did tell Scott when he reached out to me. I mean, I was not expecting it to turn into a film. All that stuff is all still true. But I did
Mhm.
tell him, I put my thumb on the scale about one thing. I said, I do not want to participate in something that is just a ripping on the Jehovah's Witnesses.
Mhm.
I said, I do not want to participate in something that is an attack. I don't want to participate in something that is just like negative. I said, if
Mhm.
there's anything I care about, it's helping people understand whether they have been a witness or they are never been one, but they just know somebody who was, or maybe their life doesn't overlap with witnesses at all, and they just have a parallel journey, like somebody who's,
Mhm.
you know, been rejected for whatever reason, for their sexual orientation, for
Mhm.
being a anything, whatever their
Mhm.
scenario is. I wanted people to feel relatability, and I wanted people to understand that everybody's like a human and they're all trying to just do their best thing, and that there's no
Mhm.
reason that we should all be like this at each other
Mhm.
just because of the witnesses. And so I didn't edit the film, I didn't shoot the film, I didn't conceive the film, I didn't direct the film, but I did influence the film in
Mhm.
that I was like, if this is going to be like, let's jump on the witnesses and let's like debunk them. And so everybody mentions that when they watch the movie, they're like, you know, it's so weird. You don't really spend that much time talking about doctrine
Mhm.
or anything like that. And I'm like,
Mhm.
yeah, there's a ton of that online already. That already exists.
Exactly. I
We
say
don't
the
need
same thing
that.
all the time. Yeah.
Yeah. What we need is people realizing, like, recognize common humanity. Let's have each other's backs. Let's help
Mhm.
each other arrive where we need to arrive, even if our journey winds up somewhere different than theirs. Have respect
Mhm.
and show love. And if you do that, you know, you've got a chance. That
Mhm.
was the big thing that we were trying to do with Witness Underground, was make it humanize the
Mhm.
witnesses for people who didn't know about that experience, and for people like yourself
Mhm.
to help you feel less alone. You know,
Right, exactly. That's
I
what I appreciated. Yeah.
I put that in the show notes. You know, originally, you know, Scott, make the movie, make Ruby feel less alone.
Oh my goodness. But that's why I love it. You know what I mean? Like we got to see you guys young, then the transition and then the aftermath. That's where I'm focusing on. Like I want to continue talking about post cult life. What
Yeah,
happens after? And it's best to come from us because we were in that position.
yep,
We were Jehovah's Witnesses before. So we can help other ex Jehovah's Witnesses. And I'm willing to be that voice and I'm willing to be that person because I feel
that's
like I
great.
have already overcome that. And it's like now I'm ready to do this the right way without the anger, without the bitterness, without the regret, and just move forward and help people also just move forward. Like look ahead. Stop looking back. Look forward so that you don't crash.
I like that about your attitude. That's part of why I wanted to talk with you. You seem like you had a positive, forward-thinking attitude, and I find that so important. Um, I one of my religious I don't know if I could call it an experiment or explorations when I was leaving was to studying other world religions, and one of them was Buddhism. And when I in the movie I talk about making my own personal Bible, and one of the things in that Bible is a Buddhist text called the Dhammapada, and there was a section in there that I still think of every day. It's like the very beginning of it. I'm actually going to read it just here. It just says, "He abused me, he beat me, he defeated me, he robbed me. In those who harbor such thoughts, hatred will never cease. He abused me, he beat me, he defeated me, he robbed me. In those who do not harbor such thoughts, hatred will cease." And hatred ceases by love. Hatred does not cease by hatred at any time. This is an old rule. I think about that. That helped me. That helped me so much, because it was just like, "Oh, that's just it. I am mad. I need to get past that, or else I'll never."
Mm-hmm.
So I've tried to focus on the love that I have for the people who are still in. You know, if
Mm-hmm.
somebody's shunned me for 20 years and then they call me and they want to be
Mm-hmm.
apologetic and be like, "I'm so sorry," which just
Mm-hmm.
happened like 2 weeks ago. This is still an ongoing thing that occurs. Um,
Mm-hmm.
my first reaction is, do not apologize. I love you. It doesn't
Wow.
matter. And
Wow.
it because it hurts me to be
Mm-hmm.
mad at them, and it doesn't do anything to them. you know
Mm,
um
right,
so
exactly.
yeah, I love the positivity. I'm glad we're talking about this.
No, yeah, that's really helpful because my mom just texted me too 2 weeks ago, and I lashed out so badly because I don't know why it triggered me, but I was like, you haven't even said sorry to me. You've been shunning me for 8 months. Like, this is all brand new for me too, and I'm like, and you don't even know if I'm dead or alive, but you're wondering if I'm thinking about you. And that really got me. Like, I was crying, I was angry, I was screaming, but like, that's just something that I'm doing right now, like exactly what you just said. Like, that right there really touched me, because I'm like, I'm never gonna force people to apologize to me or to respect me or whatever. I'm just gonna have to let it go. Like, I'm seriously contemplating just letting it go and just, once again, move on. Don't even like acknowledge
E-
what just happened. Just keep going.
Easy said, hard done. It's work.
Mm-hmm.
It's work. Just
Wow.
be patient with yourself.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Wow. Thank you. Thank you
Of
for
course.
saying that. I
Yeah.
really appreciate that. Okay, so Kyle has another question. He had like a three-part question, so I broke it up for you.
Who do you look up to in the film
Yeah.
industry?
Yeah.
Uh,
So who do you look up to in the film industry?
well, that I'm actually a film buff, film fanatic, whatever you want to call it. When I was a kid, I was in love with the movies of Alfred Hitchcock. James Zimmerman in the film, he and I watched all 43 Alfred Hitchcock movies together when we were in high school, including the R-rated Psycho. We were terrible. Um, Today, I mean, I I have some favorite directors. I'm a big fan of uh, most of Quentin Tarantino's movies for
Mm-hmm.
uh, I hope relatively obvious reasons, because they're incredibly well made and they're really cool. But sometimes they're also slightly problematic. But they're just that's a great.
Mm-hmm.
He is a very talented director, um, and I also, if I'm being totally honest, I'm mostly interested in like independent filmmakers who are um, trying to find a voice. It's not so much looking up as just respecting. Like, I
Mm-hmm.
think that film is a tough medium to, you know, like, it took
Mm-hmm.
Scott like 3 years to make this movie. And
Mm-hmm.
when I looked at what he did to do that, the amount of dedication and work,
Mm-hmm.
um, it's like I look up to anybody who's got the tenacity and the vision to like do that. I have my favorite filmmakers, and my obscure
Mm-hmm.
ones uh, from the olden days. I love like old black and white film noir type stuff, where everything's gritty
Mm-hmm.
and stuff. But really, I just think it's really brave to even think you can make a theater movie, and people who just go and do it. Like, there was a movie made, shot here at my place, on my nuclear gopher backlot. It was a short, horror film, by a director named Richard Lappersong, and it's called The Cruise. It's about a 7-minute long queer horror film, and it was, they were just location scouting, and I have a cool woods, so they decided to shoot it down in the woods. So there were zombies and all the stuff. We have a film
Wow,
crew out
that's
here and all this,
cool.
and it was so cool to watch the
Mm-hmm.
process, like the people who
Mm-hmm.
were like awesome with the cinematography. They understood all the gear and all the equipment, and they had, this
Mm-hmm.
dedication to work like multi-night shoots, and they've got, food crew, and I mean, and it
Mm-hmm.
was just to see it firsthand. I'm just like, yeah, I look up to anybody who's making indie films, because it's more work than it's worth. You do not get a lot of respect or love for that. A lot of people, like 3 people watch it and then they go, "Oh, that was cool." So I think that hopefully answers Kyle's question to the best of my ability.
Yeah, that's actually cool that you've had the time to do that because I literally am an adult watching cartoons right now. I'm catching up on all of my Disney movies.
Nice, nice, nice.
And I'm
Nothing
learning
wrong with
who the Disney person. Yeah, I'm learning who the
that.
princesses are. I'm learning about all these people now. So that's how bad it was growing up as a Jehovah's Witness. I didn't even know certain like random Disney like simple stuff. So
You didn't
it's
get to watch Disney cartoons?
oh no, my mom was so fanatic that I only
Oh,
watched the JW DVDs every day like on a loop. Only watched the
oh, see,
broadcasting.
all right, we didn't have that. Now that's another thing that I think
There
is
you go.
fascinating. Like, the
Mhm.
Witnesses have like music videos now
Mhm.
and
Right.
cartoons. Like,
Right.
that's not
Yeah,
even the
that's how
same
bad it was.
religion I was raised in. I mean, like,
Exactly. And that's
we
how I
sat there
feel
and
about this
read the
generation.
Watchtower.
Right. Exactly. So you could only
Tripping.
imagine how much has changed
Mhm.
from your generation to mine and then the next
Yeah.
because I can't even recognize them either. I'm like, I had to do the hard work. There was no simplified version, nothing. I had to do the real index yeah, like research and stuff like that. And now these kids have it easy. They don't even have to count time. No, no, no.
Hey.
Chill, chill, chill.
Now wait a second. Now, if you had been raised with Caleb and Sophia,
Mhm.
would you still be a witness today?
That's I am so glad I was not young enough to watch that kind of stuff because that whole cartoon stuff, the episodes, my mom tried to do that with my son when he was a baby and I threw that stuff out so quickly. I was like, "Oh, no, 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 no." That's exactly what they're going to do. They're going to target the new babies of my generation and
Yep.
that's what they're going to do for them and I refused it and she didn't respect that. So I had to move away. Like I literally had to move
Oh,
away
wow.
and
Wow.
raise them completely separate from the indoctrination because she was unwilling and she literally told us that she's like I'm not going to respect because I told her can you just please respect our parental preferences or whatever and she said no because she believes that it is her duty. She said, if you're not gonna teach them about Jehovah and you don't want to save their lives, if you want to die, you could die, but I'm not gonna let them die. And that's the brainwashing they have. And she was unwilling. She told me no, and I was like, okay, so that's all I need to know. You need
Yeah.
to believe people the first time when they say it and believe it. And we had to move away and raise them completely away from the Jehovah's Witness stuff because if I had to go to work, if I was a single mom, like whatever they were trying to make me do, that's the end goal is to indoctrinate the next generation. And I was like, no, I'm gonna stay married. I'm gonna move away. I'm gonna do this. You know what I mean? Like you really have to
Yeah.
take your life into your own
Yeah.
hands and not let them manipulate you or coerce you into ruining your life more. Cause I'm like, I got here because of you guys in the first place, and now you want to ruin my life more? No, 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 no. It's got to end somewhere.
I feel you. I was actually about your age when most of the stuff in the movie happened. I was 30.
Hmm.
So I was only a
Hmm.
couple of years older than you are right now. And
Hmm.
um, you have to take charge. You have
Hmm.
you're an adult. You get to decide. especially with your own children. And it's what is trippy to me is that people would think that they should be able to, what you just said. Oh, you want to go die? That's fine, but I'm going to save your kids. Um, that can be so infuriating. But the flip side of that, which is the thing that I always try to talk myself back around to, is because my dad did like the same kind of thing, right? He would take my son fishing, and Sid would come home and be like, "Yeah, Grandpa talked all about the watchtower the whole time." Every fish we caught, he reminded us how it was Jehovah's beautiful creation, and I and I'm like, well, okay, but the nice complexion to put on that is my dad loves my kid. He by his lights, he's showing love. Remind yourself that before you get too mad, that's kind of how I would have to talk to myself about it. Because it's so frustrating and as a witness, did you ever shun anybody?
Thankfully, no, I have never shunned anybody. I've I've only heard stories. Like my mom used to always tell me how she was so fanatical that she would say stuff like, even if I don't serve Jehovah anymore, you have to not talk to me anymore and stuff like that.
Wow.
Or yeah, and so she was already programming that in my mind, like, be ready for the day when you're gonna have somebody close to you that's not gonna serve Jehovah, and you need to do that. And I would always be like, huh? Like what? Like, like it's confusion, like what? And then she would tell me her experiences. That's the kind of parent she was. It was like teaching through experiences, not through example. So it was
Mhm.
always about what someone did, yada yada. And I'm like, but how, that has nothing to do with me. That was your life, your decisions. So thank God I have never done that to somebody else. But then I also had the reverse Uno card, because when it happened to me, I didn't think they were going to treat me like that. And when they did it to
Ah.
me, I was
Mhm.
like, damn, even me? Like, how you gonna do that to me? And it was really hard because my cousins were confused too. They were like, so what does this mean? What's gonna happen? And it was like everybody was so like reactionary and just like
Mhm.
being like so overly dramatic that it makes you feel like it is a death. This is the end of the world. And then it's hard to move from that and just like, damn, it wasn't even that bad, but yeah, you pushed it, you gassed it up so much
Mhm.
that it made me depressive, it made me suicidal, it made me do things that I would have otherwise never done. I would have never done these things. But since you guys always put that, like that pressure or that standard, and I was always trying to go, and I would never get there, that I was like, so what am I good for? All right, then just leave me alone. That I'm just not gonna do this anymore. Like, stop. And they don't stop. And for years it was like the soft shunning because I was reinstated, but then they're like, come to the meetings, do this, and I'm like, oh, now you want me to come, oh, now you being nice? Like, no, you
Mhm.
treated me so badly that's done, that's over, you guys are fake. And everybody else did the same thing, like yeah, all had that group think, and nobody thought for
Mhm.
themselves or whatever. But now you want to come talk to me years later, and it's like, nah, I'm good. But you know what,
And
I had to forgive people without apologies, because one of my cousins later on, she shunned me, and now she talks to me and she tells me, I'm sorry for shunning you, I'm sorry for the way I acted, I'm sorry for that. And that was my moment of like, what are you going to do? You know what I mean? What are you going to do when this happens to you? Are you going to tell them, oh, I don't care, you shunned me, or I'm going to shun you too? Or are you going to be the bigger person and just say, you know what? I love that. I love you and I've never left you. But since I respected your decision, you know what I mean? I didn't
Mhm.
push it. And now you want to talk to me and now you apologize because you saw where you were wrong, and you're not fake. Like, what I thought you were is not the way it was. And now that you cleared it up, okay, I am okay with talking to you. Even if you do stay a Jehovah's Witness, because she is like physically in but mentally out,
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
she still talks, we still talk.
Good.
And if it wasn't for that, I would literally have nobody. Like, I am alone, alone. And to get away from that loneliness, because this is what I always talk
Mhm.
about on my channel. I'm like, I'm alone, but I'm not lonely. I'm
Mm.
not depressed anymore. I'm not afraid to be alone anymore. I'm a single child, so this is not new. But even with extended family, I'm
Mhm.
alone, but I'm not lonely. I have a life. I've built something. I've done something. I got 3 kids that I can focus on. Like there's so
Yeah.
much more to live for than just how what I went through. Like it's not even about me anymore. There's
Mhm.
3 other people that I don't want to bring this whole baggage into their childhood. They don't
Right.
deserve that.
Right.
They need to
No.
grow up as normal kids, and I'm willing to do that. I'm willing to do holidays and the pledge of allegiance and do whatever I need to do for them to have the most normal upbringing that I can possibly give them without any of what else is happening in the world that I don't agree with, like, living
Yep.
a Christian life, for example. I can still do that. And they can still be in the world and still go to school and be normal, but I'm not going to bring all of this crap from my family into that generation. I'm not going to do it. So that's why I just had to tell them no more. If you're not going to be a grandmother, I can't force you to be one. Because being a grandmother doesn't mean you're going to show them Caleb and Sophia all day long. You don't even go anywhere, take them anywhere, talk to them about anything else, but you think that this whole religious stuff is being a grandmother? Like your mother didn't even do that with me. So why are you doing it to them? Like you had a good example and still? So you're that in that. I'm sorry, I can't allow it. I'm sorry. So I just had to leave all of that behind and just
Mhm.
do what it is for me. If they want to associate with me, like I'm okay with that. My cousin talks to me, but I'm not going to bring any of that for them. They're going to have their own friends, their own life, their own everything. Like I don't even talk to them about this kind of stuff. But ever since I started the channel, they've been hearing me. They're like Jehovah's Witness. Oh,
Uh,
Jehovah's Witness.
yeah.
And then that's where I educate them on what a cult is, what a religion is. And they go to church. So that I'm teaching them the difference between a cult and having a religious belief. So
Mhm.
it's
Mhm.
great to teach them because they see it and they see how I react to things like that too. So I have to keep a filter on my own stuff too because I'm like I want to be a good example for them because I don't want to tell them what to do like what my mom did to
Right.
me, but you have to show
Yep.
them through the example how you talk to people in the street, how you encounter Jehovah's
Right.
Witnesses at the door because they came to my door. And when they
Mhm.
came and they heard Jehovah's Witness, they said, oh, Mommy, Jehovah's Witnesses at the door? And I was like, yes, Jehovah's Witnesses. Remember I talked about this? I used to be one. And then that's how the conversation starts. And
Nice.
and they know about it already. You know what I mean? Like without the
Yeah.
trauma part, but they
No, but
know like what that
you
is now.
you can teach about
Mhm.
religion without
Mhm.
indoctrinating. And then people can make
Exactly.
their own decisions. That's actually doable. People do it all the time. It's not that hard. It's not that far fetched, you know.
Yeah.
Um what I'm curious about is, have you been able to start to make some worldly friends, right? Like the
Mhm.
parents of the other kids in your
Mhm.
church, or
Mhm.
the parents of other kids from school, or people you wouldn't have met otherwise, and then have just what everybody else would just call normal friendships. Like I found that that was a very strange thing for me when it was hard for me because like I looked at people as being worldly or being different, and
Mhm.
and it took me a while. That was one of the harder parts about moving on with life, was like the first time I went to a Christmas, I felt like I was on a movie set. It was weird. I'm just like,
Mhm.
oh, there's a Christmas tree and boxes and presents and
Mhm.
cookies. This is weird. Um, and but having some friends who were never part of this world has also been
Mhm.
really useful for me. Like I have some of my best buds now. I mean, some of my best friends are former witnesses, but that's just because we've known each other forever and we've all left
Mhm.
eventually. But finding some friends, finding some just peers, just people who
Mhm.
have no connection to this whatsoever, and you can just go have normal experiences, is so healthy, so good. And when with a mom with 3 kids, you should have some opportunities, hopefully, to meet some other
Mhm.
people who have never been part of this, and
Mhm.
that's wonderful. It's so great. So,
Yeah. I
If you
have
haven't done that
actually.
yet, I hope you branch out to the rest of the world, because now you can.
Exactly. No, no, I have because I started homeschooling. So it is up to me to reach out, to make field trips, to go into co ops,
Mm.
to have the homeschooling community is big.
Yeah,
And I've been able to do play dates and stuff like that. And
fun.
every single time I'm in these groups, I'm always the youngest mom. I'm always the odd one. But the conversation, like, it's great. I'm able to like communicate with them normally a little bit, and they could, it's like almost like they could sense it, like these older women, like
Mhm.
even 35, like not even that older, but it's like they could tell. And that's why I love the female interaction, is finding other women. If you're a woman, you know what I mean, because
Yep.
that a woman would understand me. And
Yeah.
that's what I needed, because my mother was not going to be the influence, the
Mhm.
motherly, figure. But through these other women, I'm able to get advice from them, know what to do at this age. And then the conversation leads to that, and then once they find out, oh, you were ex Jehovah's Witness, oh, okay, that makes sense.
Yeah,
And
then the penny drops, and they're like, "Oh, now, yeah, yeah, now,
yes,
yep, mm-hmm."
definitely could tell, definitely. And I'm like,
What?
yeah, I'm willing to reveal that part of myself, because before I was like, I'm never gonna say it. I'm gonna be like, I'm never gonna bring up my past or whatever. But
Mm,
I can't do that. It's a part of me. It's who I am, and it's
yep.
how I view the world. So I can't really like hide it too much, and I don't want to. So I'm open with it,
Why
and
should
then when
you?
I get into that, yeah, they really help me out with that. And then they kind of give me like the side eye, and they're like, well, you do know it really isn't a religion. And I'm like, oh, yeah, 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 I know it's a cult. And then they're like, oh, okay, thank God. It's like, you awake, you awake, you really know what's up. And I'm like, oh, yes, yes, I know. And that's why I'm doing this, because I felt like so introverted. I don't want to talk to people, I don't want to hug people. Like, I had such a problem with the JW upbringing that I'm like, I hate people, because they force you to love people and go out in service and say hi to the whole congregation. And I hated it. So I'm like, I hate people, and I'm sorry if it sounds wrong, but like, that's just how it was. So now I have to learn how to put myself out there, how to be polite, how to have
Mhm.
how to carry the conversation, how to handle it with kids, because raising kids was taking them to the Kingdom Hall. That's all I know
Yep.
how to raise kids. I don't know how to raise
Yep.
kids outside of that. So it's so hard that these women are so instrumental to me,
That's
because they
fantastic.
influenced me so much, especially the ones at the church, because the church community is a separate community from the homeschooling. So those women who are like more Christian, they're married and they have marital advice and they have that kind of advice for me. I'm like, I need to be your friend. I really need to know, how did you do it? How did you succeed? Because everybody else was telling me, oh, leave that guy, do this, do that. And I'm like, no, 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 no. I need something that's going to be helpful. What's going to work, because like I said, I do feel Christian. I do feel like I want to make something work if it's not abusive or anything like that. But that's the thing with the Jehovah's Witnesses. They always just want to, like, if he's not a witness, get rid of him. Doesn't matter.
Mhm.
Leave.
Mhm.
You could have the scriptural divorce. And I'm like, just because he's not a witness? Like, so you're gonna bypass everything that he's done for me, everything that he's done for us, everything, just because he doesn't go to the Kingdom Hall? I'm sorry, but I can't do that. I cannot abandon and drop somebody just because they are no longer going to the meeting. And I was not gonna do that. And so they were looking at me sideways, like, he's probably giving you apostate lies and stuff. And I'm like, how dare you say that to me? Because this is the person that I married because of what happened. Like,
Mhm.
I got DF because I got pregnant out of wedlock, yada, yada. It's a whole story. But like, we got married and did the right thing because you guys told us it was the right thing to do. And now you're gonna say that he's an apostate and he's telling me lies and he's, making me like mentally ill. Like, he's turning you into somebody who you're not. And I'm like, no, I am this way. You just don't know it because I've never told it to you. I've been closeted myself. My own self was in a closet, and I never
Mhm.
was my true self forever. But now that I'm my real self, you're disgusted by me and by him and by us and by everything that we do. And I don't appreciate that. So all of these women have been
Yeah.
so helpful for me because I cannot talk to other men about this. I can't go to an elder and talk about this. And
No.
even the idea of going to a priest is still like, I don't think so. But the
Mm-hmm.
women and the
Mm-hmm.
community and the children, that right there, that's me. And I've found that, and I'm so glad that I
I,
did because it's
yeah.
so helpful.
Yeah. Yeah. That is the to me, that is the prime benefit of having ever been in a religious community, is having a network of people, right? That
Mhm.
that have experiences to share from your age, from above your age, from below your age. They have people of all backgrounds and experiences, and when you widen that out to
Mhm.
the world at large, what you find out is that the witnesses have got no like they got no monopoly on people living life experience, people showing love, people having advice to give, people having support and perspective
Mhm.
to give. And and it's just if you think that being theocratic is the same thing as living a full life, you're missing out on so many aspects of life. And to your point,
Mhm.
like I was raising a kid, and this isn't clear in the movie, but like my marriage that ended because I left the witnesses was actually my second marriage. I actually got
Wow.
married. I got married when I was 19 to my like 6 months out of high school. And that was my son's mom, and she left the witnesses. And when she left, I stayed in, and
Mm.
we split up. So I actually had
Mhm.
two marriages that ended because of the witnesses. The first one because she left and I stayed in. The second one because I left and she stayed in.
Mhm.
And so it's just, I understand, and why I asked about if you've ever been in that shunning position. I think like if this were like football or baseball or something, and there's like a bunch of different positions on the field, I've played all of them at one point or another, right? I've been the the one who loses a marriage because I'm the witness who's being stubborn. I've been the one who loses the marriage because I'm leaving the witnesses. I've been the one who's shunned people. I've been the one who's been shunned. I've been like,
Mhm.
it doesn't matter. Like, and that actually is, I think, um, gives me empathy for other people's
Mhm.
views. It's like, oh, I remember when I was you. Yeah, 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 yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, it's cool. It's good. You got things to work through. And
Right.
um, so I think it's awesome. I'm so glad you've got that. It sounds like you're making you're making the right moves to like look out for yourself and your kids, and stay with your husband, and live your life and make your decisions and do what you feel is right,
Mhm.
because you're the only person that has to live it,
Mhm.
right? You're the only person to
Mhm.
actually experience this. You don't even, I mean, hell, the rest of us could be a hallucination for all you know. Um, I hope I'm not.
No, yeah, you're absolutely right. And I also wanted to ask you that as well. How do you identify now? Like, are you still Christian or atheist, or like how do you identify now?
I'm kind of, the closest religious group maybe that I would fellowship with if I were
Mm-hmm.
wanting that, would probably be the Unitarian Universalists. They're sort of the people who came from a Christian background, but are sort of at a point where it's kind of like, well, there's a lot more that we don't know than there is that we do. So instead of being dogmatic about what we think we know, let's just
Mm-hmm.
have each other's backs. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I don't hold any supernatural beliefs anymore. I don't spend a whole bunch of time going like, I'm an atheist, or I'm an
Mm-hmm.
agnostic, or I'm a this, or I'm a that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I'm just like, I think of myself as uh, a sometimes practicing semi-Buddhist, a occasionally hanging out with Unitarians, and a, if there's an afterlife, I'll find out when I die, and I'm cool with waiting.
Wow.
I am so, but at the same time, I
Mhm.
think of myself as a Christian in another way.
Mhm.
Um, I have I come from a deeply internalized knowledge of Christianity and the Bible and the
Mhm.
moral code from the Sermon on the Mount.
Mhm.
I have family members who are deeply Christian, and I can have biblical conversations with them that aren't debates. They're
Mhm.
discussions and agreements. They're
Mhm.
their perspectives, their conversations, because it's a part of me, right? It's
Mhm.
my biblical upbringing is as much a part of me as
Mhm.
any other thing that I've experienced. So
Mhm.
I know it seems weird to be like, "Hey, I'm not even making a statement about whether there's anything supernatural because I haven't experienced it, so I can't say."
Mhm.
Um, but at the same time, like the Bible has a lot of it is a lot of me, right? I've read it so
Mhm.
much. I know it so much. My personal Bible has chunks of the Christian Bible in it
Mhm.
because there are scriptures that matter to me.
Mhm. Yeah.
And so I'm very much a synthesist on that kind of and I've had 20 years of chewing on that, and I adjust how I feel and think about things. One thing I love to do is say, I don't know if this particular thing is true or not, but let's pretend it is and play it out. If I
Mhm.
follow, if I believe this, does it make me a better person or a worse person? Does it make me a happier person or a less happy
Mhm.
person? Does it make me a more compassionate person or a less compassionate person?
Mhm.
But I figure if there is an all powerful, all knowing, all loving God who sees hearts and does all that,
Mhm.
and I have to stand before such a being, I'll be
Mhm.
like, I'm an open book. Like
Mhm.
you can tell that everything I've done, I've just tried to not reach bad conclusions and
Mhm.
tried to be a good person. And haven't followed evidence that doesn't exist. And
Mhm.
yeah, I guess when people just sum it up as spiritual but not religious, that probably does apply to me. But
Mhm.
but for me, I have, this isn't a background; these are real books, and I read a lot. I read a
Oh
lot.
man, mine is a background. Damn.
That wasn't a judgment, but
Oh
I
man.
I essentially live in a library. I mean, my wife and I've got like
Mhm.
8,000 books. I'm not exaggerating.
Wow.
And I read a lot. I think a lot. I meditate about the things I learn, and I'm open.
Okay, good because I do have this one question
Yeah.
and I want to and obviously it's for you because I was like, "Huh?" But I'm definitely going to include it because XJW UK musical Escape, which is aka Dan from YouTube. His
Uh-huh.
question is Jehovah's Witnesses are not true fundamentalists, creationists, never taught apologetics that stand up to scrutiny. Do you allow that ex Jehovah's Witness Christians can hold an opposing view on creation? And it's also because in the documentary you said some things about the flood, and I think you said like some creation comments on there. So I wanted
Mhm.
to include this for you.
Well, I think it's factually true that people can hold an opposing view on creation. I'm assuming that what they're saying is can you leave the witnesses in uh, believe in creationism still, or I'm not totally sure I follow what the opposing view is. Um, I will only summarize that for me. I know that the education one receives as a witness about science is cherry picked in very explicit ways, right? Like they
Mhm.
choose the bits of evidence that support their perspective, and then they ignore anything else that doesn't support their perspective. So if I were trying to teach you about the history of anything, if I was going to teach you about the history of Superman, and I
Mhm.
only included the Superman movies that were starring, Christopher Reeves, and didn't let you know about anything before, after, or in any other thing, I could give you the impression those are the only Superman things that ever existed. I'm taking a silly example,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
But what I learned was that I was very ignorant about science, and that I thought I was educated about science because I had been taught by a creationist perspective that gave a very carefully selected set of information.
Mm.
And my first thought was, I don't have a clue.
Mhm.
I don't know if it's true. I don't know if it's false. I don't know if the evolutionists are right or the creationists are right, or if just nobody knows and everybody's just flinging
Mhm.
philosophy around. So I
Mhm.
went, and that was part of my education. Like, it's summarized in the film very quickly about like my initial kind of doubts, but the
Mhm.
research I did after that took me
Mhm.
years. It's still something that I find interesting. But like
Mhm.
at this point, um, you know, I think that the only way to hold a truly like young earth, or even like, there's a couple core things: to believe that the Garden of Eden's a physical actual time and place and thing,
Mhm.
and to believe that humans are a totally separate creation from the rest of the animal kingdom. Those are things that the evidence is in, and those are not facts. They're just not. They're not. It's You can hold those beliefs, but it only comes because you haven't actually gone into and really, at a deep enough level, you haven't seen the rest of the picture. And I
Mhm.
didn't see it either. No, that's nobody's fault, right? If you're raised
Mhm.
with somebody showing you part of a picture, the fact that you didn't see the
Mhm.
rest of it's not your fault. but
Mhm.
but like, in a very, very true sense, like, um evolution gets treated as this dirty word, and it's this thing,
Mhm.
it's satanic, whatever. But
Mhm.
I have a friend, and this is very, very direct. I don't think that this counts as evidence for something, but I just want to say something. I have a friend whose job is genetic analysis. He's a software engineer and bio informatics expert who works on doing DNA sequencing, and who worked with the teams that helped create the COVID multivalent vaccines. And he's literally, and I've known this guy for forever. He's a great dude. We're good buds, and he's one of my best friends. And it's his day-to-day job to understand how DNA works. It's about as mysterious to him as painting would be to somebody who's a house painter. Like, it's just a thing. And he's helped fill in blanks for me that, like, explain the fact that, like, you wouldn't even need a single fossil to know how all of the living things are related, because it's all in our DNA. It's just there. It's just all there. And it's hard to learn about. There's a lot to learn. There's a lot of study, but it's all there. And it's not a
Mhm.
philosophy, and it's not a propaganda. It's not even a debate.
Mhm.
It's just how genes work. And it's fascinating. But the first thing I had to do was admit that I didn't know, that I had been
Mhm.
intentionally miseducated about this thing. And then I had to go educate myself with an open mind, without a perspective that one thing was true and one thing was false. I had a doubt, but I didn't
Mhm.
have information. and
Mhm.
then and then go get that information. So I don't ever try to convince somebody like, oh, this is true or that's false. All I
Right.
will One of my favorite TED Talks I ever saw, this woman named Catherine Schultz, she asks the whole audience, she says, what does it feel like to be wrong? And everybody's like, feels bad. And she's like, you're saying it
Mhm.
feels bad, right? It doesn't.
Mhm.
It doesn't feel bad to be wrong. It feels bad to find out you're wrong.
Mm.
When you're wrong, you think you're right, so it doesn't feel like anything.
Right, right.
But people don't like feeling like they found out they were wrong about something, so they shy away from learning that things that might disconfirm things they think they believe. And so
Mm.
the first thing you got to do is be like, I got to be willing to be wrong. And I'm still willing
Mhm.
to be wrong. Like, if somebody could come and show me certain things today, I would change my
Mhm.
mind on a dime, because that is the rule one, is just admit you don't know everything. Just be humble
Right.
and just do your work. And admit that sometimes it feels crappy to find out you were wrong, but it's better than being wrong. So
Right.
just do that. And so that's
Mm-hmm.
how I approach all that kind of thing. And I think again, that's one of those things where everybody's got to do their own legwork. No,
Right.
you shouldn't take other people's conclusions. You shouldn't take my conclusions. You shouldn't even take, Stephen Hawking, Albert Einstein, and Neil deGrasse Tyson all agreeing. do your do your own work.
Right. Yeah. Because you got to prove it to yourself. Like you said
Yep.
earlier, if you still think that this is the truth, you need to still prove it to yourself because you're never going to
Some-
be satisfied. And that's the approach that I'm taking going to this new church now because I was like, who do I feel has the truth from 2000 years ago from when Jesus started? Which church do I think it is? And then somebody introduced me to orthodoxy. And then when I
Mhm.
started researching about church history, the traditions, and how it came from the east to the west and stuff like that, I feel as if, okay, this is what I can go with because I'm proving it to myself. I'm going to the Bible study, I'm learning with them, I'm asking questions, and I'm
Mhm.
being respectful about it. But when I disagree with something, I'm like, that bothers me. Why do you do this? Why do you do that? How is this not considered idolatry? The icons, the cross, the bowing, like a bunch of things that can be problematic.
Mhm.
It's okay. Just keep going, keep learning. And if it does really bother you, then stop going. Like, it is what it is. But for me, I'm willing to get out of my comfort zone and learn about somebody else's faith to see if that's how I want to live my life. Because I
That's
still
great.
believe, you know?
Yeah.
And I just need a new spiritual home. I'm just homeless. I'm just spiritually homeless, but I still do believe and I do want to, be repentant. I still want to do these things. And I do feel like I need God in my life. And it's only for those who need it. That's it. It's not for anybody else. That's why I don't project any of that to anybody like ever again. I don't talk about that stuff. It's
Yeah.
personal. It's about you
Yeah.
and God. And
Yeah.
that's the relationship. It is not for everybody else to be knowing what you're doing, where you're going, what you believe in. But as long as you're satisfied with what you are doing, then okay, that's what works. But in
Yeah.
our
And
community, it's
exactly.
hard to talk about that because it's like a stigma or something. It's like
Oh yeah.
taboo. And it's
Yeah.
like, oh, why are you still Christian? Or why do you go to church? You know that's fake. And it's like there's not that much respect when it comes to that, even within our own community. And that was another reason why I was like, I need to speak up. I need to show other people that there is a way to keep faith and you could still be an ex Jehovah's Witness and believe in something else. It doesn't have to be Christianity. It could be anything. As long as you kept moving forward, as long as you wake up the next day. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like life still
Yeah.
goes on. Don't kill yourself over it. You
Mhm.
can still evolve and morph into something else and your life will completely change and you will almost forget about the past. Like I'm starting to forget some things because that's how much growth I have done. I'm like, what? Who? What? Where? I don't know. I'm focused on what I'm doing. So
That's
focused.
how you'll move on. That's how you move on. And
Mm-hmm.
you're right. The XJW community, and I do love the people in this community. I'm not
Mm-hmm.
being disrespectful, but there is sometimes we came from groupthink, so we want more groupthink, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's like, well, everybody agreed, in my congregation, and then I left. Now I expect everybody outside to agree, and it's like, no, no, no,
Mm-hmm.
no, 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 no. That's not what's happening here. We're all using our life story. We're all using our experiences. We're all being students of our own lives and living our own
Mm-hmm.
experiences, and we should share those with each other. We should share the
Right.
perspective, like, this was a spiritual experience for me, or this was a thing that I learned, or this is a thing
Mm-hmm.
that I experienced on a just a any level. and
Mm-hmm.
and you can't do that when you're all trying to be groupthink and you're all trying to have that. But
Mm-hmm.
it's also how we were all, at least being raised a witness. I'm assuming you were raised witness too, from what it sounds
Mm-hmm.
like. um it's it's
Mm-hmm.
it's kind of it's kind of hard to
Mm-hmm.
get out, and that's why I recommend becoming more connected with other people with other perspectives, because the more
Mm-hmm.
you do that, the more you realize that, um, you know there's
Mm-hmm.
value in other perspectives, and
Mm-hmm.
that being surrounded by people who are all speaking the same, talking the same, reading the same, singing the same,
Mm-hmm.
doing the same, it doesn't help enrich your opportunities to learn, because you're
Mhm.
not really learning, you're just memorizing a thing. And you're when you're out in the real world, experience is a teacher, other people are teachers,
Mhm.
your own meditation or study or prayer are your own teachers, things that and you have to become open to that in order
Mhm.
to go on a journey. And
Mhm.
that's why I think that the worst thing we can do is be like, apply a litmus test to each other. I can't be like, Ruby, you're a Christian, really? Okay, why am I even on this show? Like, come on,
Yeah, I
come
know. I
on.
know.
Like, we're at different places with different experiences and different lives and
Mhm.
different places and different things, and we should be
Mhm.
like helping share our perspectives
Mhm.
non-judgmentally. and
Right.
and that's what you want, right? What doesn't
Mhm.
Aren't we supposed to treat others as we would like to be treated?
Yeah, exactly. And even if we do disagree, it's
Yeah,
okay to disagree. You could
it's
be right
fine.
wing, left wing, in the middle. It's okay. And we shouldn't be judging each other or shunning each other, even out of the cult. Like, there's
Yep.
a lot of people who still feel like, oh, well, I'm not going to be your friend anymore because you voted for this guy. And it's like, okay, come on, guys. We already left this. I'm not going to do this. I respect you and your views. But you see, like, that mentality still, like, goes over those things. It's
Oh yeah.
religion, it's politics, it's a lot of things that it's
But
like, oh, you just gotta move on and be
Chet,
convicted in what you believe in. If you believe
yeah,
in it, stand on it. Mean what you say.
yeah,
Like, don't let people push you over or walk over you because of something that you said or something that you believe. If you believe in it, stand up to it.
yep, yeah. As Chad said in the movie, he talked about how
Mm-hmm.
there's this relational aggression, relationship aggression, right? And I don't. If there's one thing I don't believe in, it's I don't believe in that. You know.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. uh, so yeah, no, I think that's a big part of being healthy, and that's a really extensive and roundabout response to the question about beliefs. But I mean,
Mm-hmm.
you know um I guarantee, the one thing I know for sure, I can say this, is that you personally, whoever is listening to this, including you, Ruby, you're not
Mm-hmm.
going to be the same person with the same views and the same experiences and the same thoughts about everything 15 years from now or 5 years from now. And if you're humble about that, then
Mm-hmm.
accept that. Don't don't see that in other people, right? If somebody
Mm-hmm.
was one way to you 10 years ago or 5 years ago or 6 months ago, it
Mm-hmm.
doesn't mean they're the same person today.
Mm-hmm.
And and if we all kind of acknowledge that, it helps, you know.
Mm-hmm. Yes, because you're
Yeah.
gonna continue to grow, change your
Yep.
opinions. I've changed. I've changed it so much. I've changed so many times. Went through so many phases that it
Mhm.
was like even a short period of time. Even 2 years ago, I was doing things different. 5 years ago, I was doing. 6 years ago, I was a witness. Like, and I was born and raised into this. So you
Mhm.
can leave and you can accelerate, or you can be completely stuck and stagnant. It's all up to you.
It is. It is.
Yep. Okay, so last question. I'm so sorry for
Okay.
keeping you here for so
No,
long.
no, are you kidding? This is great. This is great. We're having a good time.
Okay, so last question from Kyle. Where do you see yourself going from here? What's your future looking like?
um I'm gonna make more music,
Mm-hmm.
because that's what I do. Although I haven't actually made a new record in like almost 10 years. So this new album I've got coming out, I'm very excited about. Um,
Wow.
and I literally just finished recording the last song for it last Sunday, and I've been working on it for 9 years, 4 months, and 23 days. So it's a long,
Wow.
yeah, for 38 minutes of music. So, if you listen to my new album, Capistrano, once it's available, a lot of work went into that 38 minutes of music. That's all
There
I want.
better be like 12 bangers on that.
I personally think it's a beautiful record and I love it. So that's all that matters. Else even has as
Mm-hmm.
far as I'm concerned. But I guess uh I'm just gonna try to experience as much as I can, meet as many people as I can, be as happy as I can, be as humble
Mm-hmm.
as I can, and live as long as I can. I got a great situation. I've got a good career. I've got a wonderful son, a wonderful wife. I've
Mm-hmm.
got 4 rescue dogs and 2 cats. I mean, you
Mm-hmm.
know, and I've got my own little silly record label that, thanks to this documentary, I'm relaunching. So
Wow.
I'm very fortunate to have lived the life I've lived, and more of that, please, is all I'm asking. You know, I'm
Yeah.
50. I figure I can make it another 50 years. Why not?
Wow. Amazing. Okay, and where can we find you? Do you have any social media, website? Like, where can
Oh
everybody find
yeah.
you?
Well, I personally blog my random thoughts at ryansutter.net. I have a bunch of music available on a lot of streaming services if you just look for me by my name.
Mm-hmm.
I also have ryansutter.bandcamp.com. I am on Instagram and Facebook, but I'm not big on socials, so I don't
Mm-hmm.
spend a lot of time on those. So yeah, I mean, I'm not too hard to find. I mean, when you are Ryan Sutter and you own ryansutter.net, you're not exactly hiding online. Although ryansutter.com is a totally different person. That's the guy who got married on The Bachelorette to Trista.
Yeah.
Super nice dude. So don't send it to him by accident. Be like, wait a second, I saw him on Ruby's video, and he was not a 6 foot tall firefighter married
Yeah,
to.
exactly.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Um,
We need to redirect all that clout to you.
he's got .com. I've got .net. He's a nice guy. We vaguely have known each other online since before he was famous for silly reasons.
Wow.
I emailed him back in the '90s when he was in college by just random, just random.
Mm-hmm.
And then he shows up on TV, and I'm like, wait, that's the dude. That's the guy. We were email pen pals. So I'm not.
That's
I'm
so
not that
cool.
one. I'm not that one. My wife is Esther, not Trista. But yeah, it's more of the same. As long as I'm fortunate enough to keep doing it.
Yes. Oh my goodness. Thank you so much.